आफाक पे है छाई घटा रंजो अलम की, ज़हरा कहाए माह मुनव्वर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। दुनिया से आज जाफरे सादिक गुजर गए, दुनिया से आज जाफरे सादिक गुजर गए, साया भी अब इमाम का सर पर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। रोते हैं आज अहले मदीना ये करके बैन, रोते हैं आज अहले मदीना ये करके बैन, कब्रे रसूल हक का मुजाविर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। उम्मत को जिसने इल्म के चश्मे अता किए, उम्मत को जिसने इल्म के चश्मे अता किए, वो आसमान इल्म का खावर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। ज़हरे विगा से कर दिया मौला को जब शहीद, ज़हरे विगा से कर दिया मौला को जब शहीद, है शोर आज दीन का महवर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। बेवाओं का गम गुसार यतीमों का दस्तगीर, बेवाओं का गम गुसार यतीमों का दस्तगीर, वो बेकसों का मुनिसो यावर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। काज़िम उठा रहे हैं जनाजा इमाम का, काज़िम उठा रहे हैं जनाजा इमाम का। अफसोस आज दीन का रहबर नहीं रहा। शुक्रे खुदा ही लब पे रहा जिसके हर घड़ी, शुक्रे खुदा ही लब पे रहा जिसके हर घड़ी, ऐसा शफिया साबिरो शाकिर नहीं रहा। ज़हरा की सदा थी मेरा जाफर नहीं रहा। सलावत।
Thank you, Brother Pervez, for the beautiful recitation. And as it's time, please invite Sheikh with the loud salawat.
برای سلامتی آقا امام زمان صلوات. برای تعجیل در فرج آقا امام زمان صلوات.
Again, for the well-being of the community, another salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, for the hastened reappearance of Imam Zaman, and that we are his helpers and his companions, and even a lot of salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين. الحمد لله الأول قبل كل أول والآخر بعد كل آخر، والحمد لله المتجلي لخلقه بخلقه، الظاهر لقلوبهم بحجته، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه وحجته سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى محمد وعلى محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات. First and foremost, I give my condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam Zaman Ajil Faraj al-Sharif, and then to all of you on the occasion which we have come to commemorate, and that is the Shahadat of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi afdal salatu wassalam. And I request also from all of you, as we are commemorating the Shahada, but also within our own community, there are a few commemorations, a few families who are commemorating the loss of loved ones that return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's please recite a Surah Fatiha for Narjis Qasim Ali Khatau, and also for Sayyida Amna Raza, inshallah. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Among the ahkam, or even the adab of Islam, it is to remember our loved ones, to remember our dear ones when they pass away. In fact, as some of the fuqaha, they've written in the books of, you could say books of fiqh, sometimes the books of simply giving advice, that even those who pass away before us, that they have a haqq, they have a right over us. Yes, they're not living among us in this world. They've passed on, they've returned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we say, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, that we're from Allah and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we will return. But yet there's still a haqq, there's a right that they have over us. And that is to give kindness towards them, to recite Quran for them, to pray for them, though they're not physically with us in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also points this out in Surah Al-Hashr, verse 10, so chapter 59 of the Quran, verse 10, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He teaches us this dua, and that dua is رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ. So Allah, forgive us. We ask for forgiveness ourselves, but also for those brothers and sisters in deen and faith who they preceded us in Iman, or they preceded us in that return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that shows that there's this haqq and there's right that they have over us. In fact, interesting also, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he also teaches us this lesson. In fact, in the life and the seerat of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, and especially during this time which we are commemorating his shahada, that even one of his wasiyas, one of his, you could say, wills and his advice to Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam is to establish the majlis adha or azza of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. So even as the Imam himself, he's returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, have people to remember Imam Hussein alayhi salatu. And inshallah we'll kind of allude to that as well in the life of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq during our speech. But I want to focus tonight or this evening, on a very interesting question that came up from our youth. And this is on our Thursday night discussion as we were speaking with them and we're discussing matters of knowledge and understanding. And one of the questions came up, because this was a part of the discussion, that whatever we learn, whatever we gain knowledge of, that we should make sure that in some manner, in some way, that we use it for the sake of Islam. We use it either to gain closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whatever knowledge that we have, it should serve Islam. So the question was like, well, how do we do this? That is it possible to use one's degree in IT or computer science for the sake of Islam, or for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does it gain us closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Absolutely. But we have to understand that connection between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to understand that connection between our deen and ilm. One of those connections, and very quickly, again, it just came to mind, but very quickly, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that when He created Adam and He placed Adam upon this earth, and He gave Adam knowledge. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ, we gave him knowledge of everything. We gave him knowledge of everything. الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. As some of the scholars, they say that the meaning of this, وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ أَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, that we've taught him everything, the names of everything. Some say that is simply the foundation of knowledge. And upon that foundation of knowledge, he built upon that. So everything that we study is based upon that knowledge, based upon that intellect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, that ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. And we see the same thing in the seerat of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, that he laid the foundation for knowledge and laid the foundation for understanding. In the salawat, which is khasly Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, so there's a salawat in Wafatul Jinan that when we recite this salawat, in the first part of it, it gives us some of the traits of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. So it begins, Allahumma salli ala Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq. So peace be upon, salutations be upon Ja'far ibn Muhammad, Ja'far the son of Muhammad, as-Sadiq, which we all know that this was the name because of his truthfulness, that he, like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, embodied that quality of truthfulness. Then the next quality that it gives, it says, khazin al-ilm, that he is a treasure of knowledge. And subhanAllah, when we look at the life of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, that we see that he, during his lifetime and the 34 years of his, you could say, imamat that he lived, that he was given that responsibility after the shahadat of Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam, that he again took over that institution of education from his father and taught. And he had thousands of students. Some of them were rawi, some of them were people who narrated hadith, but among his students, again, there were individuals who were taught by the Imam in various sciences, in mathematics, in geography, philosophy, spirituality, irfan, engineering. There were aspects of engineering which he also taught. Of course, the Quran itself and hadith, the tafsir of the Quran itself. Science, one of his well-known students, Jabir ibn Hayyan al-Ju'fi, who's known even in the Western world as the father of chemistry, he was a student of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he laid that foundation for understanding and education, and not simply the Quran and the tafsir of Quran and ahadith, and also sciences. And so everything, and this is one of the things that we can see, that we're, as Muslims, as Muslimin, that we are blessed. We are blessed by the existence of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. In fact, there's no Muslim that can say that he's not blessed by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. The foundation of knowledge was laid by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. In law, for example, again, two of the bigger schools of the four madhahib, Abu Hanifa, he was a student of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Malik was also a student of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. And the other two were students of Malik or a student of a student of Malik. But that foundation was made by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. So his presence and his being was essential and critical to Islam. In fact, when we truly study the life of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, one of the things that we notice, and some would say that, again, at least if you're studying Islam in academia, they said, when it comes to issues of philosophy and certain sciences, so the Muslims, they began to translate the books of the Greeks into Arabic, and then later on, the Western scholars, they retranslated along with the extra, in other words, the extra sources of knowledge and thought, they retranslated from Arabic back into the Latin languages. But if we're really precise about that foundation of knowledge, that we see that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, that when he was teaching these sciences, it preceded that translation movement of Greek texts into Arabic. And so when we look at the riwayat of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, when he's talking about issues of science, one of his students, Mufaddal, for example, if you read the Tawheed al-Mufaddal, that in the Tawheed al-Mufaddal, mashallah, there are issues that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he speaks about that preceded the translations of Arabic, of Greek texts into Arabic. But also that knowledge and that science that he gives in that book is, mashallah, amazing. It's amazing. Inshallah, you guys can go see it. And alhamdulillah, this book has been translated in multiple languages. One of the books I want to kind of refer to, or at least to mention and bring up. So there's one of the beautiful books that I recently read. And the translation of that is the Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, alayhi as defined by Western scholars, or Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, alayhi according to Western scholars. So the book has been translated into Arabic by Nuruddin Ali. I was searching for the original source, but I'm not sure what the original language is. But anyway, it is in Arabic. A very beautiful book. Very beautiful book. And in that, he mentions how several of the Western scholars, how they look towards Imam Sadiq alayhi, and they actually refer to him and they mention, the foundation of knowledge, that even for Western sciences, how he laid down the foundation of knowledge. One of the books that are in English that you can perhaps at least go and read is the book of Sheikh Baqir Qureshi. So his book is actually on alislam.org. It is the life of Imam As-Sadiq alayhi, life of Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq. So a very beautiful book where he also outlines the legacy of Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq alayhi. And in the book, at least in the book of the Western scholars, Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq alayhi, he points to, or at least the way it is written, there's several aspects of knowledge and several aspects of science that is pointed out there. Of course, it goes back to one of the statements of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this that Rasulullah, he says, "Fikru sa'atin khayru min ibadat sana." That to take 1 hour of thinking and reflecting, in other words, 1 hour of studying, 1 hour of gaining knowledge, he says this is better than a year of making salat, of making ibadah. And of course, that ibadah is the mustahabbat, of course, because if it is the wajibat have to be done. But if you had that choice and that you study, or hey, I make this mustahab thing, one of the things is to study. And some of the ulama in Qom, they would do that. So actually, between the salat where we make dua, I've seen some of the ulama, they'll open either the Quran or they open a book, even if they gain one element of knowledge, something that increases their knowledge. Because, of course, in that increasing of knowledge, you gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You begin to understand the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how, also the other aspect of how our knowledge and our understanding of whatever we learn, our sciences, and of course within the parameters of Islam, because there are certain things that you should not learn. For example, the magic which separates families, and you do things which are negative. But within that parameters, that whatever that knowledge we gain, it is something that should connect us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is something that should help us to understand better the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that thought for 1 hour, or that studying for 1 hour, is better than ibadatu sana. But one of the points that I want to point out, that in the book of what Western scholars think of Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq alayhi, the way the book ends with one aspect of knowledge. And it's very beautiful because Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq alayhi, that aspect of knowledge that it ends with, he goes through one of the conversations that Imam Sadiq alayhi he has with Mufaddal. Again, as I said, Tawheed Mufaddal is a book that, it has a lot of different things. But if we read it, we see that, Imam Sadiq alayhi is giving him aspects of knowledge. For example, one of the things, which is one of the beautiful things, where he says that, the aspects of crying, That why a child cries. So yes, sometimes a child cries because he's hurt, sometimes a child cries because he's hungry. He says, but sometimes a child cries because that child needs to get the excess water off of the brain. There's a scientific aspect of that it actually helps to relieve the pressure from the brain. But in this Tawheed Mufaddal, at least what this author he ends with this knowledge of something that we all have certainty about. And I've mentioned this before. There's one knowledge, one aspect of knowledge that we all have certainty about it, but we don't have depth of knowledge about it. A thing which we have certainty about is death. That anything that comes to life, anything that has life, then it will pass on from this dunya. This is something that no one denies. Whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that eventually that thing which has life that life is going to end. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu in his conversation with Mufaddal, he points out one of the arguments that some of the, you could say atheists they had, the mulhideen they had, and it's kind of interesting as well. There's a similar argument even today. They said, well, you know what, if there truly is a God, then why do we die? Why is there death? Of course, a lot of times the atheists, they argue from this point that, oh, well, you know what, look at all these tragedies that happens, there's earthquake and people are dying, there's tsunamis, there are all of these different things, tornadoes. It happens, people die. And so Imam Sadiq, he says, even during his time, people were saying, those who wanted to deny God, he says, well, truly, if there was a God and he's merciful and he's created us, then we shouldn't die. We shouldn't die. So Imam Sadiq, he responds to this. He answers this question. And of course, he says, this is for individuals and they lack knowledge about this idea and concept of death wal fana. So death and annihilation. So they think that death is annihilation, something is completely destroyed, that there's nothing else left of that thing. So he says that they lack knowledge. Not that they deny death, that they can't deny death, but they lack knowledge with regards to that death and the understanding of it. So the first thing that Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq he poses this question to Mufaddal. This question for us to think. He says that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is definitely within his ability and power, that nothing dies, that no human being dies, no creation, no animal that he creates actually dies. He says, and at that point, when it doesn't die, he says, now how will people react? He says that the earth, if we look at it, has limited space. It has limited space. So how would the earth hold and contain everything? If we talk about every person, every animal, even if we put the animals aside, because again, we're going to eat those animals because we have to survive. Every person, since the time of Adam until now, he says, where would they go? How would they fit upon this earth? That's the first thing that will have to be resolved. When land masses, there's a limitation. It may be such that, and again, if we imagine this, that everyone was living during that time, then the exact spot that I'm in now, this is the only place that I have to be. I couldn't move to the left, I couldn't move to the right, I couldn't go forward, I couldn't go backwards. Why? Because there are people right beside me, there are people in front of me. And yeah, perhaps if I needed to get something, from a store or wherever we're going to get our food, so I have to tell this person, they have to tell that person, until it goes to the place that, and this is my just explanation, until it goes to the place where, oh, hey, that person's going to give me the bread. They made the bread and it has to come back and, hey, will I get it? Or will it actually get diverted and go to someone else? So how would we live on earth if that was the case? So that's the first question that Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam he poses. He says the second question Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam he poses, he says, look at humanity. He says, look at humanity. And look at how they interact with each other. And this is after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that what? That the earth, Ardullah wasi'ah, that there's plenty of room. Yeah, some people come into this world, some people pass away. Anything that has life, kullu nafsin dha'aqatul maut. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He has created this earth, and He's created it with sustenance, that whatever creation He places in this earth, He places enough sustenance for them. But what happens? Mankind becomes greedy. He says, and if people can't live together when there's plenty of space, there's plenty of water, there's plenty of resources, he says, and if they can't live together in their small numbers, he says, how would they live together if that was the case? How would they live together? When even with plenty to go around, that you have greed, you have malice between mankind. That one is grabbing for this or grabbing for that. That had they lived based on the protocols that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He revealed to His prophets, to His anbiya, then there would be no need to fight over the resources. There would be no need, that there's plenty. But unfortunately, even now, with all of what we have, what is the predominant saying? Oh, you know what? Resources are scarce. We don't have this, we don't have that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides. In fact, one example, and I'm just going to put this example out there because I would say fairly, at least the way they portrayed it in the news, a fairly recent discovery. And what was that? And that was the orangutan who had this real huge scar under its eye. And they were watching it. And what happened? So this orangutan pulls some leaves off, starts chewing the leaves, and places it on the gash under his eye. Within a couple of days, within a week, the gash, it heals, as if there was nothing there. So now the scientists are, oh, wow, look what this orangutan did. Use some herbal medicine to do what? To cure and to mend a wound, which was kind of bloody. Go look at the news, it's on the internet. So now the question is to see that what happens with this herb. How will we act as humanity? That we will make a grab for this thing and make sure that other people don't get it. Why? Because it's all about economics. It's not truly about caring people. It's about, hey, who controls this herb? Who controls making the medicine from this? And how much money can we charge people that, again, they can't afford it, or even their insurance only pays for part of it, and then they got to pay for the rest out of their pocket, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created this. Created this for who? For humanity. Created it for His creation. But out of our greed, what do? We snatch up this resource and we make sure other people don't have access to it. So if there was not this cycle of life, how would mankind live together? How would mankind live together? As Imam Sadiq alayhi stated. That reality of death, as Imam Sadiq alayhi elsewhere, he points out that there's a purpose for that. That if we really want to know the depth of this knowledge of death, and unfortunately most people, they don't have that depth of knowledge. They understand the reality that will happen. But what is that knowledge about? Imam Sadiq alayhi he mentions this in very beautiful hadith. And he states the purpose for mentioning death or remembering our mortality. He says, ذِكْرُ الْمَوْتِ يُمِيتُ الشَّهَوَاتِ فِي النَّفْسِ. So remembering our mortality, it suppresses or it kills a shahawat. And this, I'll qualify that, the low desires. And these are low desires that fall outside the context of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is halal. Meaning doing those things which lead us to haram, which lead us to disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our desire for, let's say for example, wealth in this world that removes us from that parameter which is halal. Another beautiful example where one person, so that we can qualify this, we understand what that shahwat is. One individual came to Imam Sadiq alayhi wasallam and says, Yabna Rasulullah. He says, you know what, I love earning money. I like to, get money. Is this bad? Is this a bad desire that I like to have wealth and be wealthy? So Imam Sadiq alayhi wasallam, he says, okay, you like earning money, you like wealth. He says, and what do you do with that wealth? He says, well, I like earning it. He says, so I take care of myself and my family. I help my brothers and sisters out who are in need, so I give that sadaqah, and I help establish a masjid, and all of these things, which are khair, which are good. So Imam Sadiq alayhi wasallam, he says that desire for wealth in that case, that you love to take care of yourself and your family, to give sadaqah, to give qarad al-hasana, to build masajid, to take care of the poor, he says, then this is not anything bad. This is not talab ad-dunya. Why? Because the end result of your love for wealth and earning is not simply to have this world, but you're putting something away for the akhirah. As the teacher of Imam Sadiq alayhi wasallam, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi wasallam, again, and that is one of the resources of knowledge, that how our Imams, of course, they have their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also there's knowledge that is handed down from Imam to Imam. Just as that knowledge was handed from Rasulullah to Imam Ali alayhi wasallam, where Imam Ali says, the Prophet taught me alf bab al-ilm, taught me 1,000 chapters of knowledge. He says, and from that I open 1,000 upon 1,000 chapters of knowledge. One of those things that Imam Baqir alayhi wasallam, he stated, and it goes through Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi wasallam as well. Imam Baqir, he says, Ij'al ad-dunya dirhamain. He says, make this world into 2 tokens, into 2 coins. He says, 1 coin, 1 dirham, he says, you spend lihayatik, lima'ashik. 1 dirham you spend towards your life. In other words, your livelihood of your family, the sadaqah, all of these things. That's ma'ash. That 1 dirham or 1 token, even if we put this in terms of knowledge as well, because it applies here too, that, okay, I've learned something. Part of that knowledge I need to use for my life, my worldly life. And that 2nd dirham, as Imam Baqir alayhi wasallam, he says, li'akhiratik. Use it towards your hereafter. So how can you, again, apply that knowledge or use that token, use your wealth towards the hereafter? Again, to give sadaqah, to give charity, something that is going to benefit you when you leave from this world. And then Imam Baqir alayhi wasallam, he says, وَالثَّالِث يَضُرْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُ. He says, if you try to make some other division, he says, it's not going to be beneficial. And why is that? Oh, well, I'll take a bit and use it for my life, take a bit and to use it for my akhirah, and I'll take another bit and maybe use it to make my dunya better. No, he says, no, make it into 2 dirhams, 2 tokens. 1 for your livelihood in this world, the other for your akhirah. So the first thing that Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi wasallam, he stated, he says that remembering our mortality, it suppresses those low desires which take us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَيَقْلَعُ مَنَابَةِ الْغَفْلَةِ. One of the knowledges of death, when we understand truly mortality, it removes from us neglectfulness. Neglectfulness of our duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, neglectfulness to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants us to do, not only in our personal life, but in our social life, our political life, how we interact with one another, how we interact with those who are oppressed, how we interact with those who are oppressors. That what is our responsibility, what is our duty in that context? The third thing that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, يقوي, so ذكر الموت, remembering our mortality, يقوي القلب بمواعد الله, that it strengthens our heart with regards to the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That promise which, again, we're taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, verse 194 of Surah Ali Imran, where we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبَّنَا وَآتِنَا مَا وَعَدْتَنَا عَلَى رُسُلِكَ, that, oh Allah, give us what you've promised on the tongues and from the message of your prophets. And what is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised? Again, it gives us that secret of death as well, that depth of knowledge of death. And what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? And what has He promised? وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. The akhirah, not this world, but that akhirah, that's where everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every soul of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, it will live, and it will live on in an akhirah. And it's much better than this world. And of course, for those who follow that guidelines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in the Quran, in the Sirat of Rasulullah, and His Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdhalu salatu wassalam, of course, khayru wa abqa, in paradise. Those who didn't, then their life will be eternal in hell because they rejected. And this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise. So remembering the death, one of the depths of knowledge or the secrets of the dhikr al-maut is what? يقوي القلب بمواعد الله. Then Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu, he says, وَيُرِقُّ الطَّبَعَ, that one of the things that remembering our mortality does, it kind of softens, or يُرِقُّ الطَّبَعَ. In other words, it refines our character. It refines that, again, our manners. That's how we interact with one another, how we speak to one another, how we regard one another. Because we understand that there's repercussions of that. That what we do and how we do it, how we interact. That are we oppressing others, taking their rights, or not taking their rights? Are we defending those who their rights are being taken and they have no voice for themselves? يرق الطبع. This is what remembering death does. And this is perhaps also why that also Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, that he would say that, and he recalled one of the poets, Kumit, who was a poet, and he would tell Kumit, he says, take us, in other words, in English I'm saying, he would like, take us to Karbala. Let us remember Karbala. The sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu. For what? For La ilaha illallah. That sacrifice for truth. One of the qualities that we also mention about Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu in that salawat for him, after we say that he's khazin al-ilm, we say that he is da'i ilayka, O Allah, who da'i ilayka bil-haq. He's the one who calls towards you with truth and in truthfulness. Same mission that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had. That same mission that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi sallam had, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, Ali ibn Hussein, or Muhammad ibn Ali, the same mission that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi sallam was carrying out. And in remembering death, or even the tragedy of Imam Hussein alayhi sallam, that we see that there are several parallels between Karbala, the tragedy of Karbala, and the masa'ib and the tragedies that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi sallam he saw. That the Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, during the time of his imamate, lived under the governance of 7 khulafa. 5 of them were Umayyad and 2 of them were among the Abbasids. So he experienced not only the difficulties of under the Umayyads, but also under the Abbasids, until he is martyred by Mansur Dawanaqi al-Lain. They said that during the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, that 14 times that he was called by Mansur Dawanaqi, that come. And each of those times, there was a time which Mansur Dawanaqi, he had made intentions as, oh, I'm going to kill this Imam. I'm going to kill him. 14 times. And one of those occasions that is narrated, and again, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, you have to remember that he's also called Shaykhul La'imma. Again, because his life, that when he was came close to the time of his shahada, according to one of the narrations, the least amount of years that he had was 65. As some of the narrations, they said he was 71. So imagine that, again, someone who reaches that age and experience what he experienced. That Mansur Dawanaqi, he told one of his wazirs, Rabi'a, he says, go to the house. And this is one of the narrations. He said, go to the house of Ja'far ibn Muhammad. And this is in the middle of the night. He says, and whatever state he's in, you bring him. So he said that Rabi', he goes to the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi wasalam in the middle of the night. It's like the wee hours in the morning, and he doesn't knock on the door, he goes to climb over the wall of the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi wasalam. And then, according to one of the narrations, that Imam Sadiq, he hears somebody's coming, he's like, what is happening here? And he actually, Imam Sadiq, he guides him down. He says, look, if you come from this way, that you're going to hurt yourself coming over the wall. Just come down. So he guides him how to come. And when he sees Imam Sadiq, he had just finished the Salatul Layl, and he says that the Emir says, come. So Imam Sadiq, alayhi wasalam, he says, okay, well, let me grab my Abba, my Mama. And Rabi' says, no. The Emir told me that however you are, bring you. According to one of the narrations that Ulama mentions, he said, it's perhaps a weak narration. He says, but it's not strange that the type of oppression that these individuals did, that perhaps this happened. He says, it's a weak narration. He says, Ya Allah. He says, and hopefully that weak narration is weak and it is a lie. That according to one of them, that he grabbed Imam Sadiq by his beard, that come. This is the musibah for Ahlul Bayt. But in any case, what we know to be certain, at least from the stronger narrations, they said the hands of Imam Sadiq was bound, and then he was made to run behind the horse towards the castle, to the governor's house of Mansur Dawanaqi. Imagine this. And it's stated that as he's going, he's a man of, at the very least, 65 years old. At most, maybe 71 years old. But they said that when Imam Sadiq alayhi wasalam, he was going behind, they said that he was breathing heavily. And at times he was saying, go slow, ahesta, go slow. There are a couple of people, as some of the like said, a couple of people, they will have difficulty in that situation to run behind a horse, just even galloping slightly. That is someone who is elderly, a young child, will have difficulty. And we saw what happened in Karbala, that how Sakina, she got separated from the caravan. A woman will also have difficulty, especially if for days they have not drank anything. Then imagine that scene. This is one of those parallels between Karbala and and the tragedy of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu. One of the other tragedies that we see in the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu that parallels Karbala, but even it precedes the tragedy of Ahlul Bayt before Karbala. They said Mansur al-Dawanaqi, not just once, they said, according to the riwayats, 1 or 2 times, for certain that he set the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu on fire. In one of those narrations, they said that Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu that he was running around and he was stomping out the fire, trying to put out the fire as the fire had come. The smoke was coming under the door, and some of the fire had come onto the other side, and they saw him, he's in the fire, he's stomping out the fire. From the outside, some of his companions, some of the neighbors are also coming to put out the fire. They said finally when the fire was put out, Imam Sadiq alayhi they said he went to one corner and he put his head down, he began to cry. Imam Sadiq was told, he says that, Ya ibn Rasulullah, laysa hadha awwal marra. This is not the first time, Ya ibn Rasulullah, that the household of Rasulullah, this house, the place where they were staying, was put on fire. That first time was in Medina, the house of Fatima. The other time was in Karbala, the tents in Karbala. So he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, that why do you cry when this is not the first time? This is not the first musibah that you had. So Imam Sadiq alayhi he says that I'm not crying because of that. I know that how our household was treated. He says, ولكن نظرت إلى نسائي وبناتي يتراكضن في الدار من حجرة إلى حجرة. He says, I'm not crying because this has not happened before. He says, I'm crying because when I look at how my women folk, that they were running from one room to the next. They were trying to run away from the fire. They were running from one place to the other. وأنا معهم فذكرت عيار جدي الحسين. He says, as I was watching them running from one place to the other, and I'm here with them, I'm here to put out that fire, then I will begin to remember the household of my grandfather Hussein, that on the day of Ashura, that after Hussein was martyred, after the men folk were martyred, that how the tents were put on fire, they had no one with them to put out that fire. This is why I'm crying. This is the tragedy that I remember, that my women folk have me. But who did Zainab have in Karbala? Who did Sakina have in Karbala? Who did the children have in Karbala to put out that fire? They said that in that tragedy, that even Imam Zayn al-Abidin, though he was there as a man, but he was ill on his deathbed, when they came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin and Zaynab al-Kubra, she says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, that the tents are on fire. What did Imam Zayn al-Abidin say? Because he was not able to help them. He says, Firru min al-nar, that run, save yourselves, don't burn in this fire. ألا لعنة الله إليكم ألا لعنة الله إلى قوم الظالمين إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذا المجلس الصادق اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وحوائجنا واشف مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وانصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه معتبر حسين.
Hussein. Hussein. Ya 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 Hussein. Ah, Kerbela, Kerbela, Kerbela.
آه کربلا 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 شوریده و شیدای تو هم شیرینی رویای منی تا به قیامت پای تو هم دین منی دنیای منی آقای منی شوریده و شیدای تو هم شیرینی رویای منی تا به قیامت پای تو هم دین منی دنیای منی آقای منی آه با شهیدان تو یا حسین آه بر سر خوان تو یا حسین آه به دلم حسرت کربلا آه کربلا 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 آه کربلا 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 آه کربلا 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 فانی در ذات احدی جان ابو فاضل مددی عاشق عشق ناب تو هم صاحب من ارباب منی آقای منی فانی در ذات احدی جان ابو فاضل مددی عاشق عشق ناب تو هم صاحب من ارباب منی آقای منی آقای منی آه ساکن کربلا یا حسین آه خاک کویت شفا یا حسین آه به دلم حسرت کربلا آه کربلا 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 صلوات
زيارة الإمام صادق
زيارة صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا صاحب السكينة. السلام عليك أيها المدفون في المدينة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا بضعة رسول الله. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وقرة عين الرسول ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين ويعصوب الدين علي بن أبي طالب وصي رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا إمام المتقين يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني سلام الله جميعا أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم جميع شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا محمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. اللهم صل على جعفر بن محمد الصادق خازن العلم الداعي إليك بالحق النور المبين. اللهم وكما جعلته معدن كلامك ووحيك وخازن علمك ولسان توحيدك وولي أمرك ومستحفظ دينك، فصل عليه يا أفضل ما صليت على أحد من أصفيائك وحججك إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم صل على ابنه ومولانا موسى بن جعفر الطاهر الطهر أيها الكاظم. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا علي بن موسى الرضا يا علي بن موسى الرضا راض بالقضاء والقضاء. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا محمد بن علي الجواد التقي. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا محمد بن علي على محمد بن علي الجواد التقي. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا علي بن محمد الحادي النقي. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا حسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا حجة بن الحسن القائم المنتظر المهدي. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليك يا معز المؤمنين المستضعفين. السلام عليك يا مذل الكافرين المستكبرين. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Assalamu alaikum. Please send a loud salawat and a surah Fatiha for Sister Nargis Khatal, sister-in-law of Brother Mohsen Khatal, and the aunt of Brother Ali Khatal. Loud salawat.
Okay.
We'll be starting prayer in less than 10 minutes. Please get wudu and form lines. Just a reminder that there's protest tomorrow at 12 to 1:30 at UT Tower. Salawat.